In this short presentation, we'll discuss the issue of climate change. Because of the increasing pertinence of this issue, it has gained prominence on the world stage in the last few decades. At the 2011 Momentum for Change initiative, the sitting UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, made a powerful comment during his address on climate change. He remarked that climate does not respect border. It does not respect who you are, rich and poor, small and big. In other words, climate affects everyone. What is climate? Climate is defined as the conditions of the atmosphere observed over an extended period of time for a particular location. Climate may change on any longer timescale, including from year to year, decade to decade, century to century, even millennia to millennia. In the Bahamas, we experience a tropical climate with a hot and wet season followed by a dry and cool season. The phrase climate change refers to gradual alterations in temperatures and patterns of rainfall over extended periods of time. It's possible that these movements are the result of natural causes, including fluctuations in the solar cycle. However, human activity has been the primary cause of climate change since the 1800s. This is mostly attributable to the combustion of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and gas. When fossil fuels are used, greenhouse gas emissions are produced. These emissions function like a blanket wrapped over the earth, which traps the heat from the sun and causes the temperature to rise. This example graph here depicts how scientists record and measure one aspect of climate, the amount of rainfall. It illustrates the amount of rainfall per year for Australia, and as you can see, it goes back to the 1800s. Causes of climate change. There are a lot of different factors that may bring about climate change all by themselves. The amount of energy that is radiated by the sun varies over time. The sun doesn't burn evenly everywhere on its surface, so some parts are hotter than others. The distance that separates Earth and the sun is also shifting throughout time. Even the flow of the oceans shifts and changes constantly. All of these changes affect the movement of heat around the world. When a volcano erupts or other natural phenomena occur, it too has the potential to alter our temperature and weather patterns. Although all of these factors contribute to overall change in the climate over time, they pale in comparison to the human effect on climate change. When fossil fuels are burned, they release gases into the air. Many of these gases are responsible for the heating of the air. On large scales, this burning of fossil fuel has the potential to alter the weather patterns of a region and, by consequence, the climate of the Earth. We use fossil fuels all the time. When we drive, when we heat and cool our homes, when we cook, when we use aerosols. And the list goes on and on. Fossil fuels are ubiquitous in our everyday lives. That being said, we'll now discuss the forcing mechanism. The forcing mechanism is the process that causes changes in climatic conditions of a place or a region. There are two types of forcing, internal and external. Internal forcing mechanisms constitute any shift in the climate that is caused by natural changes in the components of the Earth's climate system and the interactions between those components. For example, consider the varying conditions of the ocean. Shifts in the ocean that affect the climate change would be considered an internal forcing mechanism. External forcing mechanisms refer to the causes of climate change that originate from outside influences, such as human activity. Examples include the rise in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels caused by emissions from the burning of fossil fuels and the use of aerosols. The effect of these internal and external forcing mechanisms is exacerbated by the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect refers to a phenomenon where the heat radiated from the sun and reflected by a planet's surface is prevented from escaping into space by greenhouse gases in the planet's atmosphere. Instead, The energy is re-radiated in all directions around the planet. These greenhouse gases don't trap all of the heat. Some of the heat is allowed to escape, but much of it stays near the Earth's surface because of the greenhouse effect. Carbon dioxide and methane are two examples of the emissions of greenhouse gases that are contributing to the current state of the climate. These are produced during activities like operating vehicles with gasoline or heating a building with coal. Carbon dioxide may also be released into the atmosphere when land and forests are cleared. This is because large forests and plots of greenery act as carbon sinks. Plants pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to use in photosynthesis. Garbage dumps are also a significant contributor to the release of methane into the atmosphere. As the garbage decomposes, many of the chemical processes that cause this decomposition to occur release methane as a product of that reaction. Energy, industry, transportation, buildings, agriculture, and land are all some of the most significant contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. The harm that climate change can do doesn't only affect the plants and trees on the earth. It affects other forms of life as well. Climate change has both environmental and physiological repercussions for life on earth. As it relates to pollution, the effects of climate change might make ozone pollution much worse, which would have a negative impact on the health of tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people. Because changes in air quality generate changes in climate, it is inevitable that changes in climate will result from changes in air quality. The potential for climate change to exacerbate the effects of weather phenomena is also quite worrying. Rising global average temperature is associated with widespread changes in weather patterns. Scientific studies indicate that extreme weather events, such as heat waves and large storms, are likely to become more frequent and more intense with human-induced climate change. The rise in the severity and frequency of natural disasters like wildfires, hurricanes, and droughts is one of the most significant ways in which climate change is having an effect on biodiversity. Coral reef loss, deforestation, and animal extinction have already begun to occur because of climate change. Climate change impacts the social and environmental factors that determine health, such as the availability of sufficient food, clean drinking water, enough housing, and fresh air. It is anticipated that climate change would cause roughly 250,000 more fatalities each year between the years 2030 and 2050, mostly as a result of starvation, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress. Women and girls, along with other vulnerable populations, are the ones that suffer the most as a direct result of the severe effects that climate change has already had in the Caribbean on agriculture, fisheries, health, tourism, water supply, and energy. The Enabling Gender Responsive Disaster Recovery, Climate and Environmental Resilience in the Caribbean Initiative, or ENGENDER, of the Canadian government is assisting in mitigating the effects of these phenomena. In a number of Caribbean nations, the project is providing assistance to gender-based climate resilience evaluations. The goal is to guarantee that targeted steps are implemented to enhance the climate adaptation and resilience of the area by examining the gender-based needs and capabilities of highly vulnerable groups. Next, we will discuss the impact of climate change on the Bahamas. The island of Grand Bahama, the industrial capital of the Bahamas, is the subject of an examination that is informative as well as unsettling. Abaco is also being observed. The predicted map illustrates catastrophic flooding in key population areas around the island in the year 2100 if climate change goes unchecked. The projection map also indicates that there would be significant flooding over the majority of inhabited and developed areas in addition to massive swaths of the eastern region of the island. The recent passage of Hurricane Dorian across the northern Bahamas raises the question of whether or not the nation of the Bahamas was provided with adequate warning about the possible catastrophic impacts of global warming. Because of the storm, large portions of Abaco and Grand Bahama were submerged in water for a number of days after it passed. Along with the widespread flooding, the devastation that was brought about was not only economically detrimental, but also took a psychological toll on the residents of the northernmost islands. This all begs the question, how do we control climate change? Although it will take a very long time to reverse the damage that humans have done to the planet's climate, it is very important that we do so if we wish to avoid catastrophe in the future. There are many things that we can do now to reduce our impact on climate change. Starting afforestation and stopping deforestation is one way that we can make a difference. Forests help to pull carbon dioxide out of the air. Refraining from using products that contain chlorofluorocarbons or CFCs is another way that we can make a change. These aerosols react with the Earth's ozone layer, creating holes in the atmosphere that allow in greater amounts of heat. Using compressed natural gas instead of petrol and diesel to fuel our vehicles is an easy way to make a good change. Compressed natural gas produces significantly less greenhouse gas as a byproduct of its use. Compressed natural gas can also be used for cooking and many other applications where coal and wood are normally used as fuel. When traveling short distances, walking or cycling is always a better choice for the environment than driving. And carpooling to work or to events is also a way that we can reduce our greenhouse emissions. In conclusion, we have seen the negative effects that climate change has had not just on people, but also on plants, animals, and the planet itself. As a result, we have no choice but to solemnly swear today to safeguard our home planet by taking all appropriate preventative actions in every regard. Will you take the stand as well? If you would like to explore this topic further, feel free to visit some of the web resources listed here.